Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to Keep Calm and Fasten Your Seatbelts. So I'm Sonya, I work dark hoodies and I listen to synthwave music, so I'm a legit security engineer, obviously. So at first I wanted to introduce what is cybersecurity and why is it important. So a good definition would be cybersecurity is the techniques of protecting computers, networks, programs, and data from unauthorized access or attacks that are aimed for exploitations. So you might remember in October 2016, there were a series of DDoS attacks that were launched against the DNS server, and they actually caused disruption on a lot of those web services like GitHub, Spotify, PayPal. And you might have something like that, the pink unicorn from GitHub. So you're wondering, like, how is this happening? You can go on website like Shodan. Is anyone familiar with Shodan here? Okay. So basically, Shodan is the Google of IoT. So you can type, like, for example, webcam here, and it will get you all the list of open webcams on the internet. So usually an attacker will go through that list and see if those webcams are using default credentials and just zombify and launch the attack against a server. Another example of cyber attack is ransomware. So a good scenario would be a phishing attack, for example. So you would actually click on the link, download the malware on your machine, and you get your data encrypted. And to get it decrypted, you'll have to pay Bitcoin. Fun. This was from the WannaCry ransomware, and it actually hit 130 countries 2 years ago. The last example of cyber attack, this is the porn scam email. That was quite common during last summer. So basically, you can see the little blur bit at the top. That's the password. And the attacker would say, well, actually, I've been recording you doing nasty stuff in front of your webcam. And if you don't want me to send it to your family or your friend or your company, send me money through this Bitcoin address. So what I would recommend, because that's basically a scam, just take the Bitcoin address and check by yourself on a Bitcoin wallet if it's a valid one or not. Here you could see it was just a scam. Nobody paid for that. Also, a good tip, you could actually go to Have I Been Pwned and try with your own email account to see if it has been breached in any attack. This is just to give you an example of all the companies that actually suffer a data breach. Yeah, that's a lot. You might be familiar with a lot of them. So how does a data breach occur? So usually you have the attacker. The first phase would be to look for weaknesses that he can exploit on your website, your app. So he could go through social engineering, so trying to do phishing, do a little bit of OSINT, and gather intel around the target. Or he can directly scan the infrastructure to look for weaknesses. Once he got a point of attack, then he penetrates the network, exfiltrates the data, and then he can dump it on the dark web. So you might say, okay, that's cool, so yeah, this is cybersecurity. It's not really my discipline, so let's go back to web app security. I'm going to present you 3 cases that happen at the level of web AppSec. Have you heard about the Trump donation website incident? So basically, a couple of years back, the US presidential campaign was ramping up. The Trump camp did something stupid, which is not surprising. So one of their dev embedded this piece of code in their campaign donation website. That one, you might say, yeah, what's wrong with that piece of code? Well, actually, this tag was in the source code over the Trump donation webpage, and it was pulling the script directly from Igor Escobar GitHub repo. So that's Igor Escobar, the developer. That was Trump donation website. And that was the script when you were looking at the source code. So the page was loading the JavaScript file directly from the page hosted on GitHub. So you might say, what would be the consequence? Well, if the file on GitHub gets modified somehow, the change will be reflected on Trump's website, usually in another 30 seconds because it's GitHub pages. So the repository was a jQuery mask plugin, which is good because it was enhancing the UX for submitting a form. This was the jQuery mask plugin, JS. So anyone can submit a PR on this JS file because it's open source. So if Igor accepts your PR, then your JavaScript code, whatever it contains, and also this is Trump's website, will get injected to his website immediately. So what you could do You could actually modify the DOM, you can redirect the user, you can add a keylogger. But we're thinking about Trump's website, so you can do something like that. Why not redirecting every person to Clinton's website? That would be fun. So this is just to show you in the console. Just if you type that piece of code, obviously it's not live, but this is just for the fun. You can redirect to Hillary Clinton's website. Here you go. So once you have this bit of code, why not proposing it as a PR? Yeah, so basically when you're on the jQuery plugin, yeah, you can just add your piece of code and just push it and add it as a PR, and probably Igor Escobar will merge it, who knows. And just, yeah, trolling Trump websites. So a happy ending for this one. The security hole was fixed within 2.5 hours, so there's no actual damage was done on the website, besides bad PR for the Trump campaign, but I think he's used to it. Another good example is the crypto miner incident. You might have heard of it, so it actually was on the ICO website, on the United States courts, on the General Medical Council, Manchester City Council, or referred to Australia as well. This was the malicious code, so you can see like codehive.com here. So basically, there's more than 4,000 websites that were hit by that crypto miner script. So it wasn't the site themselves that had been compromised, but rather a script they had a dependency on. So what happened here? So one researcher flagged that they were using a software from TextHelp. So this is TextHelp, and they're actually doing assistive technologies, and one of which the product is called Browse Aloud, which is that one. So it's basically for accessibility, which is a good thing. And you have this script that you can usually plug in with your website with a simple 1, 2, 3 step. So now we're back to the Trump problem, except this one is real. It infected more than 4,000 websites. So let's take the script. So you have ba.js. This is the script from Browse Aloud. This was the script, and you could see that there's a little bit here doesn't make any sense. And if we deobfuscate it, we could see that it's actually the crypto miner. You can see on miner.start and using the CPU config. So what happened here? So the attacker managed to gain access to the storage where the file was and compromised it. The file gets distributed from this CDN, and now every single website embedding that piece of code has a crypto miner on it. The last example you might be familiar is the event stream NPM package incident. So last year, at the same period, in November, December, a malicious package called FatMap stream was published to NPM and was later added as a dependency to the widely used event stream package by the attacker, Right9 Control. And they had 8 million downloads for this package. So what is the event stream package? It's basically a toolkit that provides utilities to create and manage streams in JS. It was authored by Dominic Tarr. Dominic Tarr has more than 400 packages, so he doesn't really have time to manage all the packages. This is the GitHub profile from Dominic Tarr. So in July 2015, a GitHub user called Devious commented on an issue on the event stream project if they needed flat map functionality. And actually the attacker, and that's the interesting bit, did a little bit of social engineering. As you can see in the last sentence, if you publish a flat map module and then make a PR to include, I will merge it. So obviously the attacker took that opportunity to work on that. So 3 years later, in August 2018, a user identified as Antonio Macias in NPM created and published non-malicious package called FlatMap Stream. So that was a valid one. Next, Antonio actually proposed to implement that package, but the attacker approached Dominic and said, "Oh, hold on, I'll take care of that. I'll just implement it within the project." So Dominic, because he had 400 plus packages to maintain, said, "Okay, go for it." And he also gave the attacker full NPM publishing rights for the module on the NPM ecosystem. So then when he had full control, he actually pushed small cosmetics changes at first just to build up the trust. This is part of the social engineering bit. And then in October, he actually pushed the malicious code within the package. So in October 2018, there's another user on GitHub who opened an issue against Nodemon reporting an unexpected deprecation warning. And you could see more and more actually issues raised around that. And we're asking what's going on. Is there a backdoor on that package? So this attack was targeted on the Copay, because that's a secure Bitcoin wallet platform. So that was the platform Copay. Since then, it has been taken down. And the strategy of the attackers was to wait for the opportunity to be executed when the Copay app was being built. So they actually succeeded, and they were built into those versions of Copay. Since then, actually the repo has been archived, as you can see at the top. And the GitHub profile from the attacker also has been shut down, but you could still find it in the website archive. And usually when you have to update the packages, you put a nice commit. But in that case, you'll have that kind of comment message on it. Cool. So let's go now, what is web app security? So web app security is a branch of InfoSec that deals specifically with security of websites, web apps, and web services. So who here is familiar with OWASP? Okay, a few. So OWASP is basically a community dedicated to help the developers to understand a little bit more about security. This is their website, owas.org. They also provide lots of guides on various topics. So you could see like on mobile, on IoT, on API, on serverless. Name it, you will find it. And everything, all of those guides are free on their website. You might be more familiar with the OWASP Top 10. Just a raise of hand here. Who's familiar with the OWASP Top 10? Yeah, probably. OK. So the primary aim of this guide is just to flag the 10 most critical web app security risks. So usually OWASP will publish that on every 4 years. But you can see there's not really changes. There's not much changes between the two editions. We're going to have a look at the A9 using components with known vulnerabilities. So how do you know if your application is vulnerable? Who here knows all the versions of all your components that you have? And I'm not talking about only React or Redux or, yeah. So yeah, obviously, if you don't know the versions of all your components that you're using, if you don't scan for vulnerabilities regularly, and if you don't fix or upgrade those dependencies. So how can you prevent it? You can start by removing the unused dependencies and necessary features, just a little bit of cleanup in your code base. You can also continuously inventory the version that you have both client and server side. Obviously, you have to obtain the components from official sources. Be careful when you do npm install or yarn install, don't do typo squatting. So, which means that instead of doing React with 1 E, you do with 2 E's, and then you get a fake package. And also monitor for libraries and components. And I'll give you a couple of tools to help you doing this. So yeah, let's move to the tools. So who here is familiar with the dependency graph on GitHub? So basically, it's a tool available for every public repo that has dependencies on those supported languages. And basically, they will take those files and go through all their dependencies. And if you have any vulnerabilities, they will flag it. So if you want to enable it on your repo, you can go to repo, click on Insights tab, you go to Dependency Graph, and if you have a private repo, you have to allow access on it. They will send you, if any vulnerability, they will send you an email. Just a quick disclaimer, GitHub security feature don't claim to catch all vulnerabilities, because we have to keep in mind that's a free tool. A good additional tool to have also is Dependabot. So when you enable Dependency Graph, you can also add Dependabot on top of it. And the good news, it has been acquired by GitHub, so it's free. So what does, and also you can find Dependabot on the GitHub Marketplace. Yeah, and you can also go onto Security tab and just have it here. If you click here on the Automated Security Fixes and just enable it, you will have Dependabot triggering PRs automatically. And they will give you the version that you have to bump it to. They have an integration for Slack. And they have this neat feature called compatibility. So basically, they will compare with other public repos. And if it doesn't break their CI/CD pipeline, they will just bump up that score. You can configure Dependabot through YAML files if you want. If you want to target one specific branch, for example. They have a validator for a YAML file on their website. And if you don't feel adventurous, they also have the online platform. You just have to tick the boxes. Another alternative is Snyk. Who here is familiar with Snyk? Yeah. Basically, Snyk does the same thing. It covers a little bit more languages, as you can see. You can also find Snyk on the GitHub marketplace. So it's free for public and for open source. On the private repos, you can do 200 scan a day, I think. Yeah, and basically on their online platform, you'll have access to all of the info when there's a vulnerability that has been found. And they will give you a little bit more info and intel. There's also a Slack integration for this tool. You can also have it as a step within your build on GitHub, so you can also make your build fail if you like. You can also receive emails on the vulnerabilities. So who here knows that GitHub has a marketplace where you have apps and where you can use also the neat GitHub actions? So yeah, I would recommend you to go and have a look at the security and dependency management app that they have. If you're working on an open source project, it's all free. So yeah, have a try on that. Yeah, so the features that can prevent the example that I've talked about earlier, especially the Trump campaign, so is around first the content security policy and then the supersource integrity. Who here is familiar with the CSP or has integrated CSP in their company? Cool. So basically a CSP is an added layer of security that helps detect and mitigate certain types of attacks, especially injection. So how does it work? So per page you will have to cherry pick and whitelist the assets that you want the page to be loaded. If it's not within that list, it won't be loaded by the browser. You have really good documentation on the MDN website on content security policy. You also have a whole website on, it's just called Content Security Policy, that will explain to you all the different directives and the options that you can use. They will also give you examples around security CSP that you can use. One recommendation, though, is because usually you might be scared to implement a CSP because you don't want to break your website first. So I would recommend to have it report only at first, and then you can use report URI as the endpoint to just catch all the errors and fine-tune your CSP. And also, report URI is free for the 20,000 first errors that you could collect. Another one is SRI. It goes coupled with the CSP. It's also a security feature that enables the browser to verify if the resources they're fetching hasn't been tampered or manipulated by external sources. So you might have seen, like if you're fetching jQuery, Bootstrap, and all of those scripts, usually you have an option with the script tag with SRI. This is what it would look like. So we'd have like a SHA with the checksum here. Yeah, so in this case, you have the SHA 384. They will give you this integrity tag. And the SRI is quite well covered. You can see it's more than 90% by almost all browsers. You have good documentation on MDN on the topic as well. To give you a little bit more tools, you can also use online scans. So who here is familiar with WebHint? It used to be called Solar Whale and developed by Microsoft. Now it's the JS Foundation who took back the project. So basically, you will take the URL of your website, just plug it onto that website, and they will go and scan and let you know what can be improved on the website, not only in security, but also in terms of accessibility, performance, pitfalls. And the good thing with that website is usually when they flag any issues, they normally explain you what is going on, and probably they're using jargon. So the good thing here, you can actually click and they will give you a thorough documentation on the issue. I think you might be familiar with Lighthouse. It's the same process. So you would go on the DevTools with the audit panel and then just run the audit. Same with PageSpeed Insight. So you would ask, like, why are you talking about performance and SEO and all of those related to security? Well, usually the product team won't actually implement security within their sprints if there's no good reason. So one of the good reasons for implementing CSP, for example, is you're going to do a little bit of cleanup on the pages, so they will have an impact on the SEO and on your performance on the website, because obviously you'll be loading less requests per page. So everyone is happy, the product owner is happy, and the security guys are also happy. You can use website like also Uptrends to have that kind of metrics for the performance. And back on the security scan, you can use Qualys in terms of certificates, security headers to check which headers you have on your website, including the CSP. And you also have UpGuard. So what's next for those of you who are interested in security but don't really want to move to security? I would recommend Security Champions if you have that model within your company. So that Security Champion playbook is from the Alwas website. It's available on their website. But basically, a Security Champion will act as the bridge between the developers and the security team, because usually your security team in your company might be small. They can't go to every agile ceremonies. So the Security Champion will act as the bridge between the two teams. And if you're lucky and if that program is well extended, you might receive also training, go to conferences, and just upskill on that discipline. Yeah, so to give you a little bit of insight on the sources that I've been using the State of Open Source Security report from Sneak. So it's not only on JavaScript, but it's on all languages. The same for the one on Sonotype, which is the supply chain, the state of software for supply chain. There's also a really interesting postmortem post on the event stream NPM package. And Troy Hunt is an Australian researcher. He's the guy behind Have I Been Pwned, the website. And he's writing a lot around CSP and interesting blog posts. Also, if you're interested by having more resources, I wrote a piece on Medium by gathering all of the resources that I could find. And also, I'm running this initiative every Friday. If you're a woman or if you're identified as a woman and you're working in cybersec, just come and have a chat with me at the end. I can add you on this list. This is just to give visibility to all the women in cybersec. And I would recommend those meetups if you're interested. So Ladies of London Hacking Society, OS Booyah, and OS London chapter. They're doing really cool things, hacking apps, hands-on. It's for beginners. Don't be scared if you go to those those meetup. But it's really focused for the developers. It's really friendly. So yeah, and I'll finish with my motto: get secure, be secure, and stay secure. Thank you.
How do you recommend to fight this battle between security and performance practice?
Well, it depends first. Are you talking like how to implement tickets within the sprint around performance?
When you make things more secure, they quite often less performant, right? So there is kind of conflict of interest.
I guess it depends, because for the CSP, actually, it's helping you on performance. So it's probably you didn't have really good advice, because that's not the goal of security, to block or to make the app slower. Because at the end of the day, we're working on the same app. So yeah, usually, yeah, if you're using like the CSP or SRI, it wouldn't have a high impact on performance. Do you have a specific example? Or?
Nowadays, we're using packages and in JavaScript and PHP everything, and I think it's not secure. We can't, if we want to think security, we can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, how is this gonna go? If we really want to be secure, we shouldn't use any packages. What's your experience with that?
So using those tools and have the team upgrading the packages as soon as there's a new update. Obviously, there's a little bit of responsibility around probably the NPM registry. So they might have to scan at the source and not providing unsafe packages. But yeah, this is something that we can't really work on. It's just you have to keep your packages up to date, because this is actually a good attack surface for the attackers, as you've seen for example, the crypto miner, because you will actually impact more than 4,000 websites, for example. So yeah, this is just an easy target to push malicious code within packages. So there's nothing that you can do apart from maintaining your library of packages, just upgrading them as soon as there's any update.
Not being an early adopter of using the packages.
Yeah, usually.
Proven their security.
Yeah, so for example, React, you would have to look at the on the GitHub page, the number of maintainers, the number of stars, when it was last updated. So you have those kind of indicators. Also in the npm registry, you will have the number of downloads. So if it's used by the community, so you make sure that you will have upgrades on those packages. But obviously, if you have only 10 users, even if that package is quite cool, as a
Is there something to be said for pinning versions? So like the Copay thing, for example, if they had pinned that dependency to a specific version that they knew was secure, then they wouldn't have brought in the upgrade automatically. So on the one hand, like I can see that there'd be a benefit of pinning, but on the other hand, you kind of want to stay with the leading, well, you want to have the security updates. How does that trade-off work?
Yeah, so for Copay, actually, because the app was brought down, so that's why we didn't have any update on the following sessions. But if you have tools like Sneak, for example, they will give you the specific versions of the package that are malicious. So if you actually use other packages not within that range, you should be good.
Yeah, but if you pin your dependency with the @ symbol, then you don't have to worry about it. If you know that, or no, I suppose you do still have to worry about it.
Yeah, well, it depends, because if they target that specific version, in this case,
that's why
some
sort of trade-off, right? Because you kind of almost want to do a bit of due diligence on an update, pin to that version, and then stay with it until you get to do due diligence. But then I guess it takes more resources.
Yeah, and then you never know, because it might happen on that specific version that you've pinned. Yeah. Yes?
So we're using Yarn Audit to check for dependency vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned it, but also you can use npm audit and Yarn audit. Yeah.
Is that worse than, is that giving us a full sense of security by comparison to Sneak?
Yeah, it's a free version, so you can, I guess,
Sorry,
it's...
Do you think it's okay?
Yeah, it's okay, they're probably not checking against the same database. So Sneak is checking against their own database, and they have their own researcher in-house, so they might find different findings. But I would say that's a good start, actually, to start with Yarn audits or npm audits. But probably you might need to implement like something like Dependabot just to make sure that you're covering more databases.